Okay, In Defense of Ska will begin in just a moment. But first, I just want to say thank you for listening to the podcast. It means so much to us. And if you enjoy the podcast, tell your friends about it. The best way to do that is to, follow us on Instagram and Twitter and share our posts and let people know when they say, hey, is there a podcast I should be listening to? Say yes, In Defense of Ska. Go on to wherever you get podcasts from and subscribe to the podcast. Leave a 5-star review. Let people know that you support In Defense of Ska, that you defend ska. Thanks.
Dead Milkmen's unique style of mixing hardcore energy with clean guitars and weird satirical lyrics felt like it was about as close to ska as you can get without actually being ska. On top of that, they did have a few ska tunes. If You Love Somebody, Set Them on Fire was probably their best known. Basically what I'm getting at is that Dead Milkmen are a great band, and their guitarist Joe Genaro, i.e. Joe Jack Talcum, is a prime candidate to be on this podcast. So here is our interview with him. Their new album, Quaker City Quiet Pills, were released on June 9th. Make sure you grab a copy.
Dead Milkmen were a huge part of our teenage years.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think that you could get into punk rock in the 90s without hearing the Dead Milkmen.
I feel like those tapes, especially their first couple tapes from the 80s, were just circulated amongst punks.
Yeah, and tons of kids would be wearing the Dead Milkmen shirt at school. Be like, what's this all about?
That first record, that cover is so good. I mean, definitely. I don't think I had one of those shirts, but I'm sure I wanted one.
It was hard to get a Dead Milkmen shirt in Gilroy. You had to go all the way to San Jose or mail order it.
Did you listen? I listened to Big Lizard in my backyard a million times.
I think I mostly just had it either on mixtapes or would get played when I was over at friends' houses.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. I think that like nice blend of like satire, punk. I don't know. It's just great. Like there's no band like Dead Milkmen.
No band like the Dead Milkmen. You heard it here first, folks.
Well, we should probably start with If You Love Somebody, Set Them on Fire.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the best known Dead Milkmen ska song. Can you remember when you guys wrote that song? Anything about like, were you like, let's write a ska song, or was there any reason why it came out that way?
Rodney made a tape for a fictional band called the Sunflower Children of God. This was in the late 80s. A cassette that he passed around to friends, me included. And it was on that tape. And I think the joke for us, the in joke was Sunflower Children of God, figured into the prehistory of the Dead Milkmen when we were just a story. Mm-hmm. They were one of the bands that were associated with the Dead Milkmen, because when you make up fake bands, of course you make band trees and other fake bands that are related to them. And then eventually, so he made this album called 20,000 Bong Hits from Home, and he did a little tape, a cover for it and everything. There, I think it's on my bootlegs page on my website if anybody cares to hear it. But one of the songs was If You Love Somebody, Set Them on Fire. And I asked Rodney if he wouldn't mind if the Dead Milkmen covered it or did it, and we did it. We covered it. I think Rodney doesn't play guitar, so he plays keyboards. So his version is very keyboard based, but I heard an inkling of, in order to arrange it for the band, of course, Dave and I worked on it. Dave, who's deceased, Dave Blood, did an arrangement for bass and guitar. It just sounded like he was already making it ska, so we just pushed it to.
Yeah, what are some of the other? I know there's Little Man in My Head.
Yeah.
Gorilla Girl.
And that was on the same album. Gorilla Girl, yeah, was an early Dead Milkmen one that Dave and I wrote together. One of the early ones that when I first met Dave that we came up with. It just seems like a natural, easy thing to do. He played that bass line and it sounded like, well, that sounds like an old walking bass ska thing. So that's why I countered with the ska. I like to do ska rhythms.
Yeah. Well, what are some ska bands that you're into, or that you were into at least back then?
I think when I was in high school, the first thing, I can't remember whether it was the Specials or the English Beat. I think the English Beat,
Mm-hmm.
that album, what is it? I just can't stop it.
Yeah.
It just blew me away. I never heard anything like that, and I didn't know what to expect. I just bought it off of a recommendation. A high school friend of mine, when I was in high school, had a after school job at a chain record store in a mall called Sam Goody, and he recommended it. And it also, I saw good reviews of it, so I picked it up, not hearing any of the tracks, and put it on, and everything was good. And I just thought this was amazing, and it was so different. And then the Specials, of course, and that was equally amazing to me. I was already a fan of Elvis Costello, and I found out the Specials of that because I read something about him producing it or recording it. So I had to check that out, and it was awesome. And I had no idea that ska preceded reggae, because I heard reggae, of course, before ska earlier, and like when I was in junior high school and stuff. And I heard Bob Marley before I heard his reggae stuff, before I heard any ska. But later on, I found out that it was ska went into reggae, and reggae, I guess, slowed down the ska or something.
Yeah, yeah. And then ska got revived, and that was the two-tone stuff. So
yeah, that's where I heard ska. And then I think in the mid '80s, I got a tape of the Scatolites, a live tape, and that also is amazing to me. And that was my introduction to the original wave. What that sounded like. A little bit slower, a little bit more laid back. And then you can hear how that goes into reggae, I think.
during the 80s, were you familiar with any American ska bands? Like, I'm curious. One of the things I've been curious about is if you were familiar with the Hooters in their
Of
ska
course.
period. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, they're from Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering. And because they had like a Scotalites cover that was like a radio hit in Philly. It's exclusively Philly, to my understanding. Man on the Street.
Yes, I'm familiar with that song. And they also had a hit called Fighting on the Same Side. I think they redid it, a different version, when their album came out. But that was, I think it was maybe more ska when they had the independent single.
Mm-hmm.
I bought that also at Sam Goody's, because for one thing, it was an independent single.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, the Hooters would open up for just about any band at that time before they got their record deal. Their management had them opening up for us. I saw them open up for the Clash. I saw them open up for the Who. I saw them open up even for the B-52s. Wow. So I was well initiated into the Hooters thing before they went national.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting, because I wasn't sure if they were like kind of more in that sort of punk circle in those days. But yeah, apparently they were playing with those bands. So
yeah, they were. Might seem odd in retrospect, but they were.
Yeah. So Dead Milkmen, you used to cover "Message to You, Rudy" in your set sometimes.
Yeah, and we knew it from the Specials version.
Was that a common cover? I've just seen it occasionally, like on a live set. I've seen you guys do it.
We did it, I think in '89, we did it a lot on tour, but usually save for an encore, not in our regular set. I think that was like an encore song.
Was it a pretty straight cover of it?
Rodney was just beginning to play the keyboard. I think Rodney started playing. Rodney didn't always play keyboards in the Dead Milkmen, and he started on the Beelzebub tour, and that was '88, I think. 89, and that's, I think, when we worked it up with Rodney playing the keyboard, like the organ part, and we didn't have any horns, so I tried to do that little horn riff on the guitar, and that's how we did it. We recorded it like as a warm up when we were doing the Metaphysical Graffiti album, and then it eventually got, I think it's released on one of the compilation albums.
Oh, so there's a recording of it floating around out there?
There's a studio recording of it. I think it's
Nice.
on Now We Are 20. I might be wrong, but there's a compilation that came out when we were on our hiatus.
Was that a particularly favorite special song?
I liked it. I
Yeah.
mean, does that song open up the album?
Yeah.
So would have been the first one I heard. Yeah, I always liked that song.
Now, kind of recently, it was 2020, you did a cover of the Heaven 17 song, We Don't Need This Fascist Groove Thing.
Yes.
But your interpretation is like kind of more of a ska song.
Yeah, and that kind of evolved as we were working it out. Almost maybe even in the studio when we recorded it. And we did that a lot in our sets in 2018, 2019. And we actually started playing that in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's any recordings of the early ones, it might not be as ska, but
Yeah, the original's like kind of a synth pop, disco-y sort of thing. So I could see that translating that to a live band.
when we first did it, yeah, it wasn't as ska. And then the more we played it, I think I decided. So, and we recorded it. I think we recorded it in 2018, even though it wasn't released till 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you send, and then was it specifically released because of the whole like election thing, or was that just the timing that it happened to be?
We wanted it to be released right after we recorded it, but Rodney replaced Ronald Reagan with Donald Trump or something like that. Like he changed the lyric, and when we went to get clearance for it, our manager came back and said they're not the publisher denies the lyric change, so we couldn't release it that way. And then we I think Rodney wrote or somebody wrote them the one of the people from who wrote it, and they came back and said no our public just to make sure that it wasn't the publisher being thick. But no, they said no. We please respect our desire. And what's more infuriating to us is that LCD Sound System did a version and they didn't say Ronald Reagan. I think they said something like that, the orange thing or something. I don't know. They changed it and they got away with it, but maybe they didn't go through maybe they didn't even.
Yeah, they probably didn't get the clearance that you guys did.
We were trying to get clearance for a lyric change because we were doing it properly, and that's what happened. So we had to change. We had to Rodney had to dub that in the Ronald Reagan. You can barely tell. They did such a good job.
It would have been great if you hadn't done it really well. Just leave it like a weird patch.
But by 2020, it was just in the can, and we wanted to put an album out, but we were planning to put an album out in 2020. We were working on the album that's supposed to come out this June, but all the studios closed down and no one will let us come in.
Yeah,
because of the pandemic and the rules of that. Said, put this out now.
So you got this new record in the works. You put out the song "Grandpa's Not a Racist," but he voted for one.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the inspiration behind that song?
That's what Rodney just got upset. He claims he got he woke up one morning really angry and wanted to write an angry, basically anti-MAGA song, and that's what happened.
Sure, I mean, yeah.
And it's very like old school punk. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Dead Kennedys and that style of early 80s, late 70s punk that's politically charged.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to that song,
sure.
knowing somebody in our life.
Yeah. I think it's pretty clever.
So I was circling back to if you love somebody, set them on fire. So this was a song from a fake band of Rodney's, because the point of view is like, it's like a pyromaniac's point of view. So was the whole band was the character of the whole band like that? I'm just curious how much thought went into, because I like, one of the things I like about your songs is you sometimes have that sort of point of view type of song where you're speaking from a weird character or a dark character, And this is an example of that.
I don't remember a lot about the rest of that tape, so I'm not going to be able to tell you right off the top of my head what point of view the rest of it had. But I do know that I put a tape out just before that, not like maybe a year before that, with a song called "If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free," stealing the whole title from Sting's song, but a whole different lyric and completely different music. And I sort of was doing that just taking as a way to write songs, taking other people's song titles and using them as an inspiration for a completely different song. Because for some reason I'd read that song titles couldn't be copyrighted, so hey, I'll just do that.
Is that true? That they can't be?
I hope so. I don't think they can. I think. And also that inspired Rodney to write the song "I Am the Walrus" for the Dead Milkmen. And we never got sued for it, so I guess it is true. Yeah, I also wrote another song called "I Left My Heart in San Francisco," which the record company that put it, they changed it to San Francisco, but the original title was "I Left My Heart in San Francisco," which had nothing to do with the more popular song of the same name. But anyway, Rodney heard that, and he said a lady who was at his house hearing it said, "If you love somebody, set them free." No, if you love somebody, you should set them on fire. And that inspired Rodney to write the counter song, "If you love somebody, set them on fire." And 20,000 bong hits from him. So here's the titles of the songs on that. Charles Manson and Other Things, so you can get an idea what that is. Rodney's always had a fascination with Charles Manson from as long as I know him. "The Sun Shines Out of My Asshole," which then I took that title because I took that title and I made my own song called "The Sun Shines Out of My Asshole," which had nothing to do with his. "Reefer Aroni," I think Rodney was into smoking weed at this time. I know he was at this point in time. He doesn't anymore, but that was his weed phase. Everybody, I don't know if everybody goes through one, but "Whites in Night Satin" instead of "Nights in White Satin," "Whites in Night Satin." "Cobalt Blue Sunshine." "Cobalt Blue Sunshine" may have been a precursor to a song called "Beige Sunshine," which Rodney and I collaborated on, also for the same album, Metaphysical Graffiti, that had "If You Love Somebody, Set Them on Fire." "Reefer Rooter," "Jungle Music," Fuzzhead Jr., "My Connection," and of course the title track, 2,000 bong hits from him. I said 20,000. It's actually 2,000.
Just 2,000.
They tell you, yeah, it's 2. So I misspoke earlier. It's only 2,000. And then for the for the album art, he did a parody of the album art of my tape, my Jack Talcum tape that had "If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free" on it.
Nice.
So we are inspiring each other through parody.
So my friend Mike Park, he was in this band called Skank and Pickle. Do you remember that?
I saw them play.
Yeah,
I remember them. I even probably have correspondence from them. Yes, Skank and Pickle, of course.
What do you remember about Skank and Pickle?
They play ska faster than anybody else I could think that I saw. It's like maybe too fast for my taste, but they're full of energy and great. Yeah, I saw them when the Dead Milkmen played us like a radio showcase that they played at.
Oh yeah,
and the headliner was not the obvious band you would expect. They were Duran Duran.
What year was this?
93.
Was that when they had that comeback?
Yeah, I think so.
Duran Duran had they had Notorious.
No, they had like that "And I Won't Cry for Yesterday." They had that like weird 90s like
Ordinary something.
Yeah. So that way after Notorious. Yeah.
That is a weird lineup. Dead Milkmen, Skank and Pickle, and Duran Duran.
Oh, there are other bands too. There's Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine was there also.
Anyone else? Do you have any other memories from that show? Like mental pictures from that show?
I remember getting way too drunk and dancing Dancing like a madman to Skanking Pickle. Because we played, the way it was set up is we played earlier and then they played, and Duran Duran closed out the night. And Carter, the Unstoppable Sex Machine, I think, either played before us or directly after us. I don't remember. We were one of the earlier bands.
What? So I'm unfamiliar. What's Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine?
They were like remember when the Stone Roses were popular?
Yeah.
They were from England.
Okay.
They were in that. I think they were in that indie rock band.
Okay.
They formed in. I'm just looking up Wikipedia. They formed in '87, but they reached the height of their fame in '92. So they were pretty famous by that when they were at the height of their fame when they played that show, and it was in San Francisco. And the radio station that sponsored it was the alternative radio station from there. I don't remember.
Oh, so that would have been probably Live 105.
Live 105, yeah.
Yeah, it was their like audience appreciation thing.
Do you remember where the show was in San Francisco? What venue?
It wasn't like what I would call a typical, like it was like where one of those venues where you had to build the stage.
Yeah.
Erect it, and like one of those all-purpose or things. It could have even been a place where companies have conferences.
Gotcha.
Things like that.
Okay.
So,
Mike, I was telling Mike that we were interviewing you, and he said, I had me and Kevin Dill, that's the Skank Pickle Rudy, had dinner with Joe.
Yeah, I know Kevin.
You know Kevin?
What do you? I know Kevin. Yeah, he's the person I correspond with.
Do you remember having dinner with Kevin and Mike?
Vaguely, yes. Yes, I do.
Oh. Very interesting.
Now that you mention it.
Do you have any Kevin Dill stories for us?
He was at the last show that I played solo in San Francisco, because the last time I was in the area in 2018, it was in Berkeley. Mm-hmm. I remember him being there, pretty wasted.
Sounds right.
It's like, there's Kevin. He's older, but still the same. Kevin.
Just like all of us, older but still the same.
I remember he told me about Operation Ivy, and lo and behold, the Dead Milkmen played with them early on in their stint.
Oh, really? Whereabouts was that?
That was at Berkeley Square.
Okay.
One of the shows. We played 2 shows with Operation Ivy. They might have both been at Berkeley Square, but with them, they opened up for us because we had Punk Rock Girl, and that was the tour we did for that. So I sort of got friendly with Lint, who was Tim Armstrong, from that, because I really like them. So, and that I think we played a show with them before they had their album, and one maybe after they had their album.
Wow! So you guys were on tour promoting the record, which was the Beelzebubba. Was that the one with Punk Rock Girl?
Yes.
And so you play Berkeley Square. You do your Berkeley show, and Operation Ivy is your opening act. And you'd only just heard about them from Kevin, so they're still like an up and coming band.
Yeah, I might have the time.
Wow!
It might have been before Beelzebubba, but I don't remember. I might be mixing up the time frame, but I know they played before us instead of the other way.
And how were they? Can you remember what they were like at that show?
Amazing. So they blew me away. I became an instant fan.
Wow.
And we both like Mr. T Experience, Kevin. I mean, Kevin and I had a lot of the same musical tastes. Mm-hmm. In fact, I accidentally saw Operation Ivy play their second to last ever show, because I went to see Fugazi play in San Francisco, and lo and behold, there they were. They weren't on the bill, but they played.
Huh. Wait, so they played a
they played a show at Gilman that I wanted to. I was like on vacation visiting friend, and we tried to go to the Gilman, but it was sold out. But the very next day, we went to see Fugazi play an afternoon show in San Francisco, and got surprised with the set from Operation Ivy.
This was like a house show, right?
It was. I don't consider it a house show, but it was an underground show, not a non-traditional venue show.
Oh,
Maybe somebody did live there, and I do remember Jella Biafra was there, not playing, but just in the audience. And I remember Ian sweeping up because we stayed chatting, and after the guys are like they're such the responsible band, they helped clean up. we were there afterwards talking to Jesse and Lint and sweeping up, cleaning up the place. That's what I remember from that.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the Jesse said, "Yeah, I'm leaving the band, and you're lucky we saw us because we're not going to be around
Dang.
anymore." So I saw them 3 times.
So Fugazi, unannounced set by Operation Ivy. Anyone else play that?
And somebody else missed. I think the Mr. T Experience might have been the other band. Don't quote me, but I think because that's another band I wanted my friend to see. She was living in San Francisco. No, she wasn't living in San Francisco. She was still living in Philly. But we were visiting her friend that lived in San Francisco. And I was like, you got to see Mr. T Experience. And who knows when they're going to come to the East Coast to play. So let's try to see them in Operation Ivy. I think they were at that gig.
Do you remember how many people were at the show? Was this sort of like a low key type of show?
It was a low key kind of. It wasn't like super packed.
Mm-hmm.
It was a comfortable show.
Huh.
And we just happened to find out about it, and that was that. So we lucked out because we couldn't see them because it was sold out at Gilman, and still were able to.
How was Fugazi?
Amazing. And I got lucky because I also knew somebody who corresponded with Ian, and I got to hear Fugazi on. He sent her a tape, and then she dubbed it for me, and I got to hear them before they had any release. So I was already kind of familiar there too. I felt like such the insider.
So, in the early days of Dead Milkmen, when you were coming up in Philadelphia, you guys kind of were part of the hardcore scene, right?
Yeah. Well, we started like playing indie, whatever gigs we could play, and we didn't really consider ourselves a hardcore band. But that scene had already been brewing, and we were just getting invited to play shows. Interestingly enough, in Philly, there were a lot of shows that they weren't like strict hardcore, but hardcore bands would be on them. But you'd also have more an old school punk band or whatnot.
How did if you have like these hardcore bands playing and you guys played, did you guys go over well with these audiences?
With some of them.
Yeah.
With some of the, at least enough of the audience that we would get asked back. And we would also put on our own shows as well at the same venues that had and invite band. There's another band that also played hardcore shows that were similar, that weren't strictly hardcore. They were called Electric Love Muffin, and they played the same shows that we played, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it inspired us to play faster because when we started out, we weren't the fastest. We got faster, like in '83. We got faster as we found ourselves assimilating into that scene.
Yeah,
maybe as a subconscious way of pleasing the crowd, but we're fitting in, and also because we enjoyed it. I remember first hearing "In God We Trust" by the Dead Kennedys, and that was the fastest thing I'd ever heard up until that point. And that inspired us. And this is when it was just Rodney, me, and my neighbor, and we weren't a real band, but that inspired us to write some songs in that vein, which led to eventually, I guess they became part of our set.
What were some of the bands and the venues, the DIY venues in Philly when you guys were starting out?
There were bands like Why Die,
mm-hmm.
FOD, for Flag of Democracy. There's, I don't think Agnostic Front were from Philly, but there are a lot of bands that played Philly a lot.
Mhm.
Like Iron Cross, I guess from DC played Philly a lot. Decontrol, Autistic Behavior.
Hmm.
There's a band that I really liked called the Stickmen, and you really couldn't categorize the Stickmen as anything, but they were fast. So they played a lot of hardcore scene shows. There's a band called Circle of Shit, COS. I remember that now. And the venues, there was one venue called Love Club, which was often just 21 and over,
Mhm.
which sucked for me because I wasn't 21 yet, so I couldn't go to those shows. But occasionally they would have an all ages show. But because they, in Philly, at least back then, if you were to serve alcohol, you really you couldn't allow anybody under 21. Although I got snuck in sometimes if I could find somebody that would.
What was the best way to sneak in? Just doing it as a roadie, walking in with some gear?
Yeah. That's how I got to see the Misfits.
Nice.
Before I was of age at that very place. I couldn't be in the pit. I had to be in the balcony acting as the roadie. Because I guess they didn't want to get the club's license revoked. And I really looked way younger than my real age even.
Okay.
I might have been 19, but I looked like I was 12, which sucked.
Did you ever get caught and kicked out?
Yes, I did get caught and kicked out, and almost threatened to call the police.
Oh man!
And that because I had altered my ID.
Wait, how did you alter your ID?
Back then, IDs were paper. The driver's license were paper, so it was pretty easy. Just get an X-Acto knife, and you cut out a number from, say, your account number or whatever, and you change it for the date.
Okay.
So that you change your dates, and I use that to get in the places for a while, but then it didn't work at the somebody figured it out. The bouncer figured it out at the East Side Club, which is another punk club that the Dead Milkmen even played out before I was of age. Rodney wasn't of age either, and they wouldn't let us go out in front. We had to stay backstage all the time because that's the way it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, that upset me because all my friends were already inside and I had to just wait the whole show, walking around the city until they got out.
Do you remember which show that was?
It was The Damned when they came through in 1982 or 83. Yeah, and then I got paranoid because they said the guy was like, you could be arrested for doing this, and I could call the cops on you, but I'll be nice, and I don't want to ever see you here again. Yeah. And the Dead Milkmen played there after that, too.
Were you paranoid at the show that you played there?
No, I wasn't paranoid because we had to play. I was just paranoid that I would get pulled over for some reason, and they would see that my license. I couldn't wait till I probably should have just reported the license lost, and then I didn't think of that.
Oh, so they took your license. You didn't get your license back.
No, I got it back, but the guy said you can get in big trouble for this.
For altering it.
That's what the bouncer told me. Yeah, for altering it. And the way he noticed was by holding it up to a light, and he could faintly see because you laminate it. You don't have to laminate your license, but you laminate it after you use the X-Acto knife and change the numbers.
Yeah, but then that one part that's doubled up, that's gonna show through.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
How much older did you say you were when you altered your license? Did you make it like you were just 21, or did you go a little too far?
Probably too far. Because I didn't. You have only so many options in the date and the numbers you have on there. But I think I was like 23 or something.
Gotcha.
So we talked about this a little bit. Before Dead Milkmen was an official band, it was like kind of an idea or a joke band or a concept that you guys were.
Yeah, a concept band that made tapes.
Yeah.
And made a newsletter that had a story about us.
Now the newsletter started because of Wings doing one, and that gave you an idea to do one.
Yeah, that's the story. Wings, I still have some of them. Wings Fun Club.
The Wings Fun Club. What kind of things did the Wings Fun Club talk about?
Yeah, I joined it because I wrote to I liked mail. I still like mail, but back then, what kind of things you get? You get like 4 times a year. You would get a glossy fold out newsletter. Maybe it was only twice a year. I don't know. I thought it was amazing for the little amount of money it cost to be in it. They probably lost money on people that weren't in abroad because they sent the stuff out. They sent slides. Like, here's slides that Linda McCartney took of Wings and or whatever, and like slides. Put them in your own, have your own slideshow. Set of 4 or 5 slides. I don't know. And what other things? Like little. I don't really remember. I remember the slides because it was so odd to me.
Yeah, that is really weird.
Yeah, but the newsletter itself was the thing that we were making fun of. It was so positive, and I wanted to make something that was just the opposite. Like the people that were writing the newsletter hated the guy and hated the fans, and he was oblivious to all this.
Nice. What was the process of creating the Dead Milkmen mythology in this time period? Was it just trying to think of the most ridiculous things as you could?
Yes, my friend Garth and I would like play a game of gin rummy. That was our favorite game, and just talk while we were playing it and brainstorm like what's going to happen now. Let's have Jack Talcum record an album, and his keyboard player, who's addicted to smack, passes out on the keys, and it creates a song that's just obnoxious, but he goes with it and releases it. Now his wife is going to have an abortion, and she's going to make a coffee book table photo album, all documenting it, and that's going to be the big controversy for the next newsletter. And Jack Talcum was upset because he wanted to have the kid, and she didn't want to.
And you were recording songs on tape at this time?
Yes, we did multi-tracking before there was 4-track cassette things. Yeah, I would record on the basic track on, like, say, a cassette, and then I had a cassette and a stereo that I was able to rig so that the signal would pass through that, and I had an 8-track cartridge player recorder that I got at Radio Shack for really cheap that I recorded also on stereo. It did a pretty good job of recording, actually. It was just annoying because you couldn't rewind.
Mm.
So I would record on the cassette and then play the cassette back whilst recording through this JCPenney stereo system that I was able to take apart in the back and rig so that the sound would be mixed. The sound would go, it would basically become a mixer from the microphone would mix the microphone and the cassette signal. And I could take the output RCA jacks into the input of the 8-track and record. Therefore you get an overdub, a live overdub. Live mix too. You couldn't remix anything.
Yeah.
And then if I wanted a third thing, sometimes I did, you take the 8-track cartridge and play that back. You'd switch your wires or jacks around, and then that would go back onto the cassette.
And so then how did all this sound?
You can hear some of it on the bootleg page. It didn't sound the greatest, but as long as you didn't do more than 2 passes, it was passable.
Okay.
Once you got the past that, it would get too hissy.
Yeah. Then you got too much tape hiss coming through.
And I didn't like Dolby. I would always take the Dolby off because I thought the Dolby was muddling everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I like the hiss better than not having hiss.
Yeah.
But that's how we did the early stuff. And it helped to have somebody around like Garth or Rodney, because if you had somebody else, you wouldn't have to do another overdub. You just have them perform it with you.
Did any of those songs make it to like early Dead Milkmen records?
Yeah. The song called Plum Dumb was one of those songs. It made it on there. I think the song Junkie was another one, and the song Spit Sink. These all made it onto, I think, the first album that we did.
Okay. So I know you were a fan of like Dylan and Bowie and Ramones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Were you interested in like parody music or anything of that sort? I'm just curious if like there was a parody music influence on you.
Yeah. I can't speak for anybody else in the band, but I like the Dr. Demento show, which had some parody stuff on it. I like Weird Al. I guess I still do like Weird Al.
Did Dr. Demento, did they play Dead Milkmen? I feel like they did, didn't they?
Yes. They played Dead Milkmen. And the way we found out was we heard it. I didn't know ahead of time, but we were on tour, I think, for either might have been Eat Your Paisley in 86. And we were doing a late night drive after one show. A lot of times back then, if we didn't have a place to stay, we would just drive to the next town. And it was easier to drive at night.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just flipping through the radio and Dr. Demento comes on and I say, stop, that's Dr. Demento. Let's listen to it. And I guess there's some grumbling. Oh, not this show. No, let's listen to it. Like there's not that much else on the radio. I think we were going through Texas or something or out in nowhere. And to our surprise, he played Bitch and Camaro right then on that. It was like, I think a Sunday night or something. I don't remember that. It was always on Sunday nights in Philly, but it may have been a different. I think it was late at night, and there it was. He played Bitch and Camara, and I remember Rodney being upset because he had he censored it. He cut out the AIDS part. There's a part in there where Rodney does his little Doors thing, so that was all spliced out. So they did a special edit for the Dr. Demento show, which I guess the Dr. Demento producers did. I don't know. I don't think the record company did it.
Yeah. Did they when that song was played on college radio, did they cut that part out too?
No, I don't think so.
So just on Dr. Demento.
And I have that record. I have the record now, the Dr. Demento record. I bought it on eBay later on when I saw it went up for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody sold it.
So was that exciting for you though to get?
It was exciting for me.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, I can't believe it. This is wonderful. And then Rodney's like, this is not wonderful. He censored our song. but we were friendly with him. We met him at a record signing.
Oh yeah,
in California. Yeah.
When was that?
Oh, the later 80s.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly, but we were doing the record signing, and there he is, and he bought a stack of records, a huge stack of records.
Wow. So he came to have you sign his records.
We didn't sign his records. He was there. I think, I don't know. I guess we signed I think we signed a record for him. I think we signed a Dead Milkmen record for him. But it was like anybody, it's like one of those things for promotional things the record company makes you do, where you're behind the counter. So people will hopefully buy the records there, or they can bring them in if they already have them, and or whatever they want you to sign, a poster. But yeah.
I read somewhere too that Residents, you were a big fan of the Residents.
Yeah, as a band we were, especially I think Dave was probably the biggest band.
You not as much as Dave or some of the other members.
Oh, I like the Residents. Yeah, I like them, but I'm not as knowledgeable.
Is there like an album or an era that you particularly like of the Residents?
I had one of their albums. Now I can't remember what it was called.
It was the one with the weird songs on it.
Yes, that's the one. It was all covered. Oh, it was their one side was John Philip Sousa covers. Nice. I think. Yeah. Which was good. It was good.
Big Lizard in My Backyard is your debut record. Before that, you have a tape called "Death Rides a Pale Cow."
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk a little bit about the recording of Big Lizard? Because this was recorded in like a couple sessions plus Also, some of the recordings were done at Dean's house.
Yes. Yeah, we did 2 sessions. Originally, the way I envisioned it was going to be a 10-song EP.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the bands I liked were doing that sort of thing, like the Meat Puppets' first album and the Metal Circus by Husker Du. These short, but every song's amazing. And we picked out our 10 songs and we spent all of our band fun on the studio time. And we recorded them and mixed them. But as luck had it, we couldn't find a record company to do it. Our friend Dan Mapp, who later became our tour manager, was gonna bankroll the pressing, and we had researched all that stuff, and we were gonna do it, press it up on our own, being that no one else would put it out anyway. But then fate struck, and he got his car totaled in an auto accident, as Dean recently reminded me when we were trying to figure out the history of this. And yeah, we didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't want to we'd already made our own tape of Death Rides a Pale Cow, but a lot of the same songs were going to be on this, so it didn't seem to, like, a self-release cassette was not the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave found out that there was a record company called Fever in Philadelphia, and I think he did some research. He went to the house of he went to the address. It was a residence, and knocked on the door and introduced himself, and it turned out to be this guy named Colin Kammerer, who was a professor at Wharton School. He was an economics professor, and Dave studied economics at Temple, and was studying economics for a master's at Purdue University when he quit, and that's right before he became part of the Dead Milkmen when he moved back to Philly from Indiana. So he hit it off pretty well with this guy. And then the rest of us all went after a band practice. It was only like 5 or 6 blocks from where we practiced, and met him and played our tape for him. And he was interested, but he said he wasn't interested in putting out an album that was so short, or an EP. So he had us go back in the studio. He gave us money to go back after consulting he had a partner in Chicago. And he also requested that we go play in Chicago. So we did a little road trip at the end of I think 84, and played out there and met his partner. I forget his name. And slept on his floor. And he said, okay, well, it was kind of like a test to see if we were willing to go on tour. And he already knew the song Bitch and Genaro because we played it on the radio at this college radio station, University of Pennsylvania, WXPN, on their radio on their Sunday night show that was reserved for punk rock and new wave, called Yesterday's Now Music Today. They would have bands come in every now and then. So yeah, we played that, and somebody carded it up and started playing it on Yesterday's Now Music Today.
Mm-hmm.
Bitch and Genaro. So on the basis of that, he signed us to a deal, but we had to go back and record some more songs. So we recorded another 10. I didn't feel as confident in the second session as in the first session. I don't think we did as well, but I was miserably sick with a cold, but we didn't cancel. And I think that I was given cough syrup, so I would stop coughing, and I think it made me play a little sloppier than normal, but it all worked out. But I think we got like 8 songs out of that, and we padded it out with a couple songs from Dean's 4-track. He had a Fostex 4-track where we would record. That's what we recorded a lot of a tape called Somebody Shot Sunshine, which was our follow-up to Death Rides a Pale Cow. That's what happened. We were selling this tape called Somebody Shot Sunshine and had those tracks on it. But Colin also said, please stop selling this tape. Please stop selling your tapes, because they were selling pretty well. We were just duping them in cassette to cassette thing. We were selling them at shows. He says, just please stop selling these, because he wants there to be a demand for the album, as if, people wouldn't buy the vinyl if they already had these tapes.
So on the song Rostabilly, at the very end of the Rostabilly, you say, I'm all messed up on cough syrup, so never mind.
Oh, that's
Rodney. That's Rodney?
Yeah, Rodney said
that.
Okay.
Yeah. Was that at the second session when you were?
Yes.
I assume that inspired that line.
That's one of Rodney's ad libs. Yeah. Maybe because I was all messed
For
up.
Sure. Yeah.
I didn't really think I was that messed up, but I was messed up enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Now I read this this interview where somebody in the band said that Bitchin' Camaro was inspired originally by the Suicidal Tendencies Institutionalized.
I don't know. Maybe. Okay. They're similar.
Yeah, because it's like talking in the beginning and then fast.
But we don't go back to the talking like they do.
No.
We just go fast and that's it.
You did one take at the session thinking you would have another shot at it, and
yeah, because we messed it up.
Yeah.
Because Rodney's supposed to also say he's going down to the shore. Like in the if you hear the Death Rides of Pale Cow tape version, it's the way it's, I think, quote unquote supposed to be, but now there is no supposed to be.
Right.
Because after that, we just goofed around and did whatever. As long as we got back to the "you got a car now" thing.
Yeah.
What kind of car do you have? Then it was fine. We would do all kinds of ad-libbing in there. But nobody seemed to mind. I thought we were going to do it again. And then even in the second session, we didn't have time. I feel like the second session was shorter, but I don't know, maybe my time experience is wrong. But we also did songs in the second session that just stayed in the can because they were so bad. I think we tried to do Surfing Cow. We may have tried to do Watching Scotty Die. They just didn't come out right. So lo and behold, the Big Lizard album featured most of our fastest songs.
The opening track of the record, Tiny Town, like this is an example of what we were talking about earlier. Like the song is from a point of view of a character, and the character's like a unsavory character.
Right, but it's not our point of view. And Rodney's good at that. Rodney's good at making sure that it's not him. At least I think so, because of how derogatory he like, I think no one who's really that person is going to say my daughter's a mongoloid, our gene pool, because our gene pool's been destroyed. At that point, you must know that he's just kidding. Although there were people that thought we were serious back then.
Oh yeah, because I felt like that was one of the unique things about, because a lot of punk bands were political and commenting on this sort of racism and right wing stuff, and you guys' take was to sort of do the satirical like songs like that, but I thought that they were pretty effective like ways to satirize that stuff of that time.
Yeah, because you're making fun of them.
Yeah. Did you have a hard time? I mean, you said sometimes people wouldn't get it, but did you have a hard time did people understanding that you guys had a point of view, that you were saying something? I mean, some of your songs are like obviously like funny, but that there is like content in your songs that isn't just strictly funny.
Yeah, I was hoping that they would. I do remember reading one letter from a college radio station manager who was probably a college student, who felt the need to tell us that the station would never play anything by us ever. There's no room for this type of sentiment, for this racism. And he quoted like the Tiny Town,
really,
whatnot.
Wow.
And I think we responded, or somebody in the band responded, trying to explain it. So be it. And hopefully there weren't any people that were racist who thought, oh, we can relate to that.
Yeah.
Otherwise they'd be a little wacky. But I suppose there could have been.
Yeah.
If
Racists aren't always the smartest.
And also the AIDS thing, that college, that some people had objection to that, making fun of the Doors in that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's homophobic, and of course they had Dr. Demento thought it was not right for his audience, so he got rid of it.
That always seemed like, that line always just seemed like kind of silly, like a non sequitur. I don't know, like what Rodney's point of view was when he wrote that line. Yeah, the Doors song with the AIDS line. Yeah, is that what you think? That it was just kind of
like dirty hippie, you're gonna get an STD.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know. He didn't. Hippies were a big target of his.
Yeah, I could tell. Okay, so on Beelzebubba, you have a song called Stewart, and I want to ask about a line that Jon Wurster kid, the kid that delivers papers in the neighborhood. He's a foreign kid. Some of the neighbors say he smokes crack, but I don't believe it.
Yeah, he's a fun kid. Not a foreign kid, but
fun. Used to play drums in Superchunk, and now he plays drums in Mountain Goats.
And he also plays for Bob Mould band. Yeah, he was. What band did he play? I think he played in a band called Mr. Happy. I might be wrong, but at our very first show, he organized the very first show that the Dead Milkmen played as a band.
Really?
Yes. That's when we met. That's when I met him. Dean already knew him because he's from Dean's neck of the woods. And Dean and he also had a tape recorded project called Drum Dorks, which they play. They perform as characters, as like junior high school kids who love to play the drums. So the Drum Dorks, and their songs are just them talking, and then let's do a paradiddle. They're not playing. They're playing on their little practice things, and that's the tape. That's pretty funny. Or at least I thought it was funny. And John back then had another alter ego called Johnny Earthshoe, and he had a band called Earth. Not a band that played live, but made tapes. See, this was the thing. Dead Milkmen weren't the only band that made tapes, from pretending that they're in a band. His was called Earth Shoes for the Needy, and he had some silly. I mean, you could hear his early sense of humor in that project too. So we called him Johnny Earthshoe. I mean, he called himself that. And he hung around our practice spot up in Sellersville, Pennsylvania, when we practiced, and operated the tape machine when we recorded our practices. That's how that's how Johnny Earthshoe got a credit.
That's like a little reference in the song, yeah.
Oh yeah, a callback to Jon Wurster, his real name.
Yeah.
Which he didn't know about until he heard it.
Oh yeah.
Until the album came out and he heard it. So it probably came as a shock to him.
The Stewart in the song was based off of a real person named Stewart, from a West Lafayette trailer park.
Yeah.
From your first tour, I believe.
We played on our first tour for 1985. And Stewart Frescus, spelled Stwart, lived in that trailer park. He organized a show for us there. He was a friend of Dave Blood's. When Dave was studying economics at Purdue, Stewart was and is a chemist, and they stayed in touch. We still see Stewart every now and then when we play in Chicago. But Stewart Frescus came on tour with us on one of our early tours as a roadie. So we got to know him pretty well.
Was he a good roadie?
Yeah, he was very responsible. He's a super intelligent person.
Nice.
He does psychedelic, or was doing psychedelic research before he became a roadie. He was working for a chemical company, and they were doing something wrong, illegal, and he decided to be a whistleblower on them. And because of that, he said, I have to leave town. I have a specific need to not be found right now. Do you mind if I go on tour with you? And we're like, well, we could use a hand.
Is there any? I'm curious also about the line in the song that says, "They're good, fine people, but they don't know what the queers are doing to the soil." I was curious about the significance of that, or where that came from.
That's just making fun of these kooks and their conspiracies. And they always seem to have to, it's all the fault of, it's all the fault of these people. It's all the fault of the queers. It's all the fault of the immigrants.
Yeah.
And this is why. They're building, it's so ridiculous. Yeah, they're building landing strips for Martians.
Yeah. So that same record, you had Punk Rock Girl, which is your biggest hit. So when you shot the video, you're singing the song and the band behind you is kind of like fucking around and like sometimes making you laugh. So I get the impression that when you guys were shooting the video for this, you weren't like trying to make a big deal out of it. You were just trying to like make something fun. Like it's not a big budget video or anything like that.
Well, it was a budgeted video. Wasn't the cheapest thing. Our videos got progressively more expensive as we went on. I didn't necessarily want to do any lip syncing, but it was like, when we were planning it, so you have to do a little bit. You have to do this and that. I said, well, let's just kind of just make fun of the whole lip syncing thing, and that was one way we got to it. We were purposely showing the sound the sound recordist in the video, so that it was almost meta.
Yeah,
and you see the outtakes kind of, but that's part of the video.
Sure.
So it's kind of like a conscious decision. It's probably Adam Bernstein's idea. He would talk with us. He was the video director for all of our videos except our very first one, which we did on our own. The very first one was The Thing That Hates Hippies. After that, we got Adam to do the Big Time Operator video.
Mm-hmm.
And we found him because we saw a They Might Be Giants video that we really, really liked on that 120 Minutes program on MTV.
Mm-hmm.
And we called MTV. We didn't know that was before they had credits on the videos, so we had to call to find out who made the video. And they very kindly told us it was this guy Adam Bernstein, and we looked him up, and he was in New York, and he agreed to do our video. And usually the way we did our videos was we had a powwow session beforehand. What ideas do you have? We would give him all our ideas. He would say, tell us what's plausible and what he thought of them, and come up with a grand scheme, and then do it. Figure out where we could, location scouts would go out and find it. It was the whole, almost like making a commercial, because that's what it was, making a commercial. I wasn't thrilled with making videos, but, with Adam, it seemed more fun than anything that I could imagine otherwise.
Yeah, I also read that you were that there was more pressure after Punk Rock Girl was a success. That there was pressure on you to create more hits in that vein.
It always seems to work that way. It's like the record company doesn't pay too much attention to you until you have a hit, and then they pay too much attention to you. It's like you don't get enough attention, then you get too much, and so they're all kind. But I think, that because I sang that song, and I'm not the normal singer of the band, that created another tension, another layer of tension. And one thing about the contract that we signed with Fever Records, who in turn had a deal with Enigma Records, we weren't we weren't on Enigma Records, but we had to deal with that contractual obligation via Fever Records, the Philly company, was that we didn't have the right to choose which song was going to be the emphasis track or the video. That was a Fever and Enigma Records choice. So we didn't choose Punk Rock Girl. They did. And then after that, it's like, now they want more songs that are sung by me. That's unfortunate. And
were you surprised how big that song got?
I was very surprised.
Yeah.
Looking back, it's easy to see maybe. It didn't make that much sense to me back then. It was a song that I wrote for Dave and mine other project called Ornamental Wigwam, which we did as a duo. We never got to make an album, unfortunately. We did home recordings, but that was a song we played for at least a year before it became a Milkman song as Ornamental Wigwam. Just Dave and me.
The song, like, it's, I mean, obviously, you know, it's a catchy song, so it makes sense why it caught on the way it did. But I think I remember it was surprising to me, you know, being a fan of Big Lizard, that the band who made Big Lizard was like getting MTV play. It seems strange to me.
It is strange, and it's a fluke that they even put it in the rotation to begin with, but supposedly it did well on their show. It was Dial MTV, and that was lucky for us.
Now, there was this thing I want to ask about called Club MTV, where you guys played. It was Julie Brown hosted it.
Yeah, downtown Julie Brown.
Yeah. You played Punk Rock Girl. Do you remember this?
Of course.
So you're playing this song. I think Rodney has a tuba.
Yeah.
There's no tuba in the song.
We tried to make it as difficult for them as possible. Yeah. We didn't want to do it. We said no to a record company, or we said no to Enigma, not Fever. We were dealing with Enigma. And our manager came back we were on tour when we got the request, and we had already done 120 minutes, which was great. I thought that was a good thing for us. That was right down our alley.
Yeah.
That venue of MTV. But to be on Club MTV didn't make any sense. And I think unanimously we said, no, we don't want to do that. And then our manager came back a couple days later and said, you can't say no. Enigma Records isn't letting you. You have to. And we had 2 shows booked in a row at 930 Club in Washington, D.C. So we also said, well, how on earth are we going to go from we have to play a show that same night. And so they tape in the daytime. You can take Amtrak. Don't worry about it. They'll rent anything you need. And said, they'll rent anything we need. Let's ask for the craziest things. And we asked for a tuba. We get there's no tuba. And then the whole thing started where we become asshole rock stars and say, nope, we're not doing it. You got to get a tuba. So someone had to run out and rent a tuba.
And the drum set has these cymbals that are so high. They're like as high as they could possibly be.
Yes, we purposely made it ridiculous. And we got a bunch of rubber fishing worms, and we had somebody behind the stage throwing them over us into the dancers, which you don't really see in the video, but we knew it was happening. It was just, and we played it as straight as possible, because there's a run through that you do, and then there's the real thing that they tape, and they only do one go through.
The moshing kids.
The moshing kids are they were the normal dancers, but they were specifically told by the producers that they were to do the moshing for us. I don't know what got into Club MTV. They must have lost their minds, the producers, to have us even on there. Maybe they were trying to move it into a more punk thing. I know Green Day blew up like a couple years after that. No, a few years. A few years after that. and maybe that's the band that they really were looking for.
Yes, yeah, I know. It is a weird time capsule when you think of like late '80s Club MTV, Dead Milkmen. It's such a weird just confluence of all these things.
Yeah, because we knew we weren't the music that they wanted.
Yeah.
Like, and we even said we have this other thing called Instant Club Hit from our previous album. Wouldn't it make more sense if we play that on your show? It's a dance song. No. We don't go back to last year.
So Dead Milkmen did a fake breakup in Norway.
Yeah, you heard about that. We did that only because we heard that that's where Camper Van Beethoven broke up. I don't know how true that is, but we heard Camper Van Beethoven broke up in Oslo, Norway, and we got booked in Oslo, Norway, and we thought this would be fun to stage a on-stage breakup of the band, and we did just that. We staged an on-stage breakup and broke up in Oslo, but it was fake. I think we got back together. We reunited for the encore.
So it didn't really take.
No, it didn't take.
What was the setup? Did somebody pretend to get mad at a song?
Yeah. Either I got mad at Rodney or Rodney got mad at me, which is believable because it happens a lot. But we took it to the nth degree, and I think I threw down my guitar and didn't smash anything. I just like, I'm out of here. Stormed out into the freezing cold, and like the audience was befuddled. What's going on? I mean, we weren't that big in Norway anyway.
Did you have a big show about getting back together for the encore?
Yeah. Yes. Hugs and kisses, and there we were. And I don't know if anybody got the joke that it was all making fun of Camper Van Beethoven breaking up.
But it's even more fun to do those sort of jokes when it's a small show and nobody really is in on it.
We have to entertain ourselves.
Did Camper Van Beethoven break up on stage?
I don't think so. I mean, I
want to ask about. So we talked about the new record a little bit. When the album's released, you're going to be giving like 50% of the profits to Rock to the Future affiliate organization. Is it?
We did that for our EP, but to a different organization. It was Girls Rock Philly, but now it's Rock to the Future.
What is Rock to the Future?
It's like a school. It's sort of like School of Rock, but it's not School of Rock for kids from Philadelphia who may otherwise not get a chance to perform music because of the way the music programs in public schools are so underfunded or almost non-existent now.
Yeah, for sure.
This has to come up to you have to be in grades 6 to 10, or at least entering 6th grade. You must live in Philadelphia, and there is an income requirement. I think you have to be 200%, at least 200% of the poverty level. You have to have some special needs.
I see.
And a willingness to play music with other people. And it's like an after-school thing, twice a week or something.
Very cool. Do you have a release date for the record?
June 9th.
June 9th. All right.
Don't go anywhere. If you want to hear the rest of this conversation, head over to our Patreon. Thank you for listening to In Defense of Ska. Please rate and review this podcast and tell a friend. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at In Defense of Ska. Pick up Aaron's book, In Defense of Ska, at your local bookstore or online. This podcast is edited by Chris Reeves of Ska Punk International. This is your co-host, Adam Davis of Omnigone, leaving you by saying ska now more than ever. That's right, and this whole episode goes out to Eric Solis.
Eric Solis.
Solis or Solis?
Solis. Don't you know how to pronounce Spanish
I don't know
words?
shit.
Are you doing Duolingo?
I am, but not right now.
And how's your Spanish?
It's not good. Muy mal.
You better up those games you're playing.
I should.
Yeah.
Hey, so we just got done talking to Joe from Dead Milkmen.
Oh yeah.
Over on the Patreon, we continue this conversation.
Oh yes, there's a very unusual story about a professional baseball player who was a massive Dead Milkman fan.
Can't pronounce Dead Milkmen.
Dead Milkmen. Yes.
There you go. So, if you want to head over there, hear the rest of this conversation, you can do that right now. And maybe you could tell us who is a professional sports athlete who is a huge fan of our podcast. There's got to be somebody out there.
There's definitely somebody. Next week, we have an episode. It's a great episode. Maybe the best episode. Tom May from the Menzingers.
Ooh, yeah.
Or I should say Tom May from Bob and the Saggets.